Dum, 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 dum. Hi! Hello! And welcome to my tiny little YouTube channel. Today I want to talk with you about this guy, the Shoei RF 1200. I had this helmet for 6 years and I want to share my experience with you. Now there's a lot of videos about this helmet on YouTube already. Tons of tests and reviews have been done. Revzilla always shows you how to take it apart and go into the guts. Tony, we miss you. But I wanted to share with you how it is to live with this helmet, take it on adventure rides, canyon carving, and I did also lots of track days with this one. So if you want to know how this helmet holds up after 6 years, please stay tuned. I will share my knowledge. Hello again. Shoei RF 1200. So a little bit history about this helmet. Not this helmet, but the 1200 was announced and launched by Shoei 6.5 years ago by the time of the recording of this video. I personally had this helmet after I had the Shoei RF 1100 for a couple of years, and now I own it for just over 6 years. What have I done in that time with that one? I will later show how it held up, but also to give you some background that I actually used the helmet and didn't just sit on a shelf. I did, it's hard to say how many exactly, but at least 30,000 miles in this helmet. The kind of riding I did was at first mainly sport riding, sport touring on an S1000RR. I did longer 800, 1000 mile trips with this helmet, a lot of canyon carving, really learning how to ride a sports bike. And then also I did over 10 track days in this helmet. I went to GP tracks like Laguna Seca, Sachsenring, and this helmet was awesome. Also adventure riding. When I'm going out with my GS, this is my most used helmet. How does it hold up there? Because it is not an adventure helmet, right? It hasn't had the peak, doesn't have the huge visor and massive ventilation that you usually see on these adventure helmets. But for the street riding part, obviously this helmet is perfect. It is a street helmet. When I go into more adventure off-roading part of it, I usually just rock it with an open visor, put some sunglasses in, and get plenty of ventilation. Yes, it gets a little bit warm around the cheeks because it's such a good fitting and all-encompassing helmet. So you get a little bit warm here, and an adventure helmet would definitely be better for very hardcore off-roading. However, for my 90% on-road, 10% off-road, this helmet did the job very, very well. So yeah, in summary, I threw a lot of miles at this helmet. I did week-long tours, I did track riding, canyon riding, city riding. I've not taken it through rain. I live in North California, so we don't have a lot of rain here, so I really don't know how it performs in rain. But in windy weather, cold weather, hot weather, very, very hot weather, for example in Death Valley with that helmet, it holds up superb. Now, after I've told you a little bit like what I put this helmet through, let's talk a little bit more about track riding. When you take this to the track, it is an excellent helmet. But what about the Shoei X14 that you have seen earlier? I got this helmet because of more and more experience on the track and finally me figuring out how to ride a high-powered motorcycle around a racetrack. I got more and more comfortable with lean angle, and once you get to very, very high lean angles, we're talking about elbow dragging. Here's a photo. The Shoei RF 1200 gets a little bit out of its element. The position around your head is in a way that you can see a lot of the road, but it limits your vision up on the top. The X14 is a very similar helmet. They even have the same visor, but it is rotated so that you have, so that you have a lot of visibility out when you're really tucked over and looking up ahead on really high lean angles when you're to the side of the bike. That's when you need a helmet like this. If you're not planning to do any elbow dragging, this helmet is totally okay for you on the track. And goodbye. Okay, now that you know a little bit what I've done with this helmet the past 6 years, I want to look through the helmet, or I want with you to have a closer look at the helmet and see how it held up after all that, not abuse, use, after all that use, how it held up after all that use. So let's start with the paint. If anyone has seen my last review of the AGV AX7, it's linked below or over there, yeah, right there, it's right there. Getting dizzy. So, the paint job of this helmet. How did it hold up after 6 years of use? And let me clarify a little bit how I used it. Obviously, I have it on my head when I ride a motorcycle, but when I have the helmet off my head, I treat it well. I don't put it on the ground, I don't toss it around. If I transport it somewhere in my car, I put it in a bag. Just like common sense, right? I don't leave it on a motorcycle overnight outside. This helmet was handcrafted by specialists in Japan. They put a lot of effort in it. It is not a cheap piece of equipment, but most importantly, it protects your head, your brain. So that should be worth something, right? Long story short, when I take it off the motorcycle, I don't leave it hanging on the motorcycle. I don't let it fall down on the motorcycle. I don't leave it out in the rain. I simply take it inside and put it into a spot where it is safe. So that said, treat your helmet well, and then all the defects that you accumulate after 6 years, like on this one, are due to riding and things that are outside of your control. So take care of your helmets. If you want your helmet to keep your brain safe, maybe take care of it. Anyway, rambling. Let me show you some close-ups. There are a couple of nicks in the paint. As far as I know, they are caused by little stone chips on the highway. There you see like one here, like very light surface scratches here, but that's about it. I would say for a 6-year-old paint job, it held up remarkably well. There's no flaking, nothing came off, there's no discoloration, and the helmet still looks really, really good. So in summary, after 6 years, the paint job held up super well. I have no complaints at all. It is still looking almost as good as the first day I had it. No complaints in that compartment. Thumbs up for me. All right, let's talk more about the visor. As you probably know, right, it's really easy to take off. Choop. Choop. Ta-da! And one cool thing about this visor is it has these reinforced ridges on top and the bottom, which makes it very, very sturdy. So if you open or close the visor, let me just get it back in so I can show you. Boom, done. This is 6.5-year-old design, and it's still better than a lot of other helmets on the market. Really cool. So when you operate it, you see it has detents on all the levels, and even though it's 6 years old, it stays in place, there's no rattling, and if you close it, it still has a super tight lock, and everything works as it should. Now, Shoei helmets don't come with a tinted visor in the box. I had, over the 6 years, 3 tinted visors now. This is number 3. Number 1, I exchanged because it got old. It had got a couple of rock chips and little damages, little scratches from maybe not cleaning it the right way. So after maybe 3 years or so, I replaced the visor to get a second one. And these visors are around $65, I think. The second visor was replaced because of a little incident. A friend of mine put the helmet on the ground and it scratched the visor. So he was so kind to replace the visor for me. And this is number 3. It is almost perfect. It has some tiny scratches here and there, nothing too major that makes me want to replace it. But I really value clear vision because Vision is such a crucial part of motorcycling, and therefore I replace them every now and then. They're very easy to get, they're very high quality. And there's one more thing. Shoei X14, Shoei RF 1200, they have the same visor. So that means you can take any visor that is for the X14, including the race visors that are sometimes cheaper than these, little tip, and can swap them back and forth, which is really cool. So if you have a race helmet and a normal street helmet, you can use the same visors and just share them. Really neat little thing. Thank you, Shoei. Speaking of the visor, the gasket, the rubber here is like everything on the helmet, 6 years old. It is still in a really good condition. There's nothing happening to the material. It still looks like on day one, and it holds any moisture out and makes a very quiet seal when you ride with the helmet on the highway. So no complaints there. Overall, it just works. There's no rattling. All is great. Speaking of no rattling, the vents, right, if you can hear it, they operate still smoothly. There's like a little bit of, cannot see this one. The vents operate smoothly. You see you hear there's no weird noises. They don't flop around. They just feel still great after using them thousands of times. Same for the chin one here. Still works all as it should be. So no complaints there. All right, let's talk quickly about some modifications I did to the helmet. Here you can see I added a GoPro mount. The helmet is very aerodynamic, and it was a little bit tricky to get a GoPro mount fitted here. There is a link in the description to a blog article that I did how you can make this work. I put this on over 5 years ago. It looks a little bit skinny, however the 3M tape held it in place. I was with it in Death Valley and other really hot areas where the rubber gets a little bit softer. It never fell off, worked great for me. Second modification is the Sena SMH10R. I really like it because it's so small, and with earplugs, you always should use earplugs. The sound quality is pretty good, and you have replaceable batteries, so that's really nice. This one is now, I think, on the second battery. The first battery got a little wonky after 5 years or so of use and recharging it many times. So this one's on the second battery. And also you can see it's all nicely tucked away. Here's the cables and here's the battery. So there's nothing in the way. But as I have a helmet like this, let's talk about the interior guts. I'm not Anthony from RefZilla, so I won't take it apart. But I want to talk with you about the quality. How did this liner hold up? It is still the first liner from the time I bought the helmet. And you can see there's no rips, there's no dirt. Well, this red part got a little bit darker, so that definitely changed a little bit. But else, yeah, the materials look really good shape, nothing ripped, nothing is worn out. Every now and then I just take them out and wash them in a sink with warm water and some baby shampoo. Why baby shampoo? Because it's very mild, so you have no aggressive substances in it, and it is very good to remove the grease that your face and hair produces. Just use a little tiny amount of baby shampoo and you can get your interior of the helmet grease-free and also really good smelling. Just a little tip about the maintenance there. One more thing, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. Okay, this is a little bit hard to capture. The one thing where you can really see that this helmet is a little bit worn, here in the liner, the warning label, it lost most of its paint. So yeah, this is a little bit worn. This is probably the only part where you really see the age of the helmet. Really hard to get the camera in there, but it's there. Then another thing, over here at the chin, you can see actually that material wore off a tiny little bit. So it's usually covered in this black fake leather or whatever it's supposed to be. And at the very chin, probably where I grabbed the helmet, that's where it got worn off. But it's not flopping around, it's not causing any issues, just doesn't look perfect anymore. But yeah, just a little bit, and then a worn out label. that are the only parts of the helmet that show any wear and tear. Alright, one more thing about the interior, the cheek pads. I actually changed these cheek pads. This is a size large helmet, and you can get the cheek pads for all the Shoei RF 1200s in different thicknesses, so you can dial in the custom fit for your face. If you can maybe see that my face is a little bit narrow, my cheeks are just not as puffy as they could be. That makes a helmet with a normal fit a little bit loose on my cheeks. When I say loose, the helmet out of the box in size large works great for my face and head. However, if you go to more extreme riding, like on the track, and you pop up out of the wind cover at 160 miles an hour and you get a blast of wind against the helmet, you need very good, strong cheek pads, because else the entire visor gets pressed by the wind on your face, which makes it really tricky to navigate a motorcycle around a turn when you don't see anything. So I changed the cheek pads. They are between $40 and $50, and you can then really dial in the fit if you want to have it a little bit thinner, if you have maybe a bigger face, or thicker if you have a very narrow face like I do, then you can dial this in for $50. Not too bad, definitely a nice option that you have there from Shoei. Most importantly, how is the helmet to ride with? Like I said earlier, I had a lot of experience with this helmet on all sorts of trips, short runs through the canyons, long hauls where I think the longest rides were probably like 10 hours in the saddle with this helmet on, and it's great. It is really, really comfortable. It is an extremely light helmet. In this class there's only the AGV K6, I think it's called, that has a similar weight, but as far as I know this helmet is still lighter, even though it's 6.5 years old. So very, very light. Once you wear it, it is actually amazing. It feels like you're not wearing a helmet at all. Of course you see it in your periphery vision that there is a helmet, but weight wise it feels amazing. And that's a big plus, especially when you're 8 hours, for example, in the saddle. To have a really aerodynamic helmet that is very light makes the ride much, much more comfortable. Speaking of comfort, sound is a big factor there as well. I always use earplugs, so I cannot speak too much for the sound isolation. When you go on rides, I would just recommend for anyone to use earplugs. It makes the riding so much more comfortable and fun. You don't get drained so much, and you're just sharper for a longer time. Also, the speakers sound so much better because you noise cancel a lot of the road noise and so on out. So sound actually sounds better with earplugs in as well. Little trip there. Ventilation is great, right? You have 1, 2, 3 vents up here, one down here, and you can even open and close the exit ports over here for the Venturi effect that sucks out the moisture and thinning. But again, it's just very comfortable. The material inside is great. It's always comfortable on the skin. It cools you enough on a very hot day. And if you ride on chillier mornings, especially when you leave in the mountain, the helmet works great on cooler temperatures as well. Right. Let's talk about cleaning. Obviously it is important to keep at least the visor clean so you can see where you're going and you're not covered in all the bugs and dirt and grime that you collected. So how did I clean it over the last 6 years to not damage the paint, to not damage the visor? What is my experience there? Well, the easiest way to clean the helmet is to get wet paper towels. So you get paper towels, make them wet, and then you just put them over the helmet and let the water soak in for maybe 5-10 minutes until all the carcasses and dead stuff on your helmet, especially on your visor, gets rehydrated, and then you can wipe it off very, very easily. Take a dry sheet after that and wipe it off until clean. If you want to keep the visor super clean, especially when you're on the go, I can only recommend the Carl size lens cleaner and a really nice microfiber towel that you would use on camera lenses like the one we're shooting this one with. And make sure that you get the one lens cleaner that is safe for all coated lenses. That means this is not aggressive at all and won't destroy any material of your helmet. It's linked in the description below if you want to pick it up from Amazon. So recap, outside I just clean with water, maybe a drop of dish soap, mild dish soap, to get some heavier stains off. And then for the visor, ideally use a size lens cleaner and a microfiber towel, but you can also let it soak in with a paper towel and then rub it off and you will have really good results. The key for helmet maintenance is don't use anything aggressive, don't use rubbing alcohol or anything like that, and your helmet will look really good. Like I said, 6 years old, still looks really great. The interior, just take it out, clean it in your sink with warm water and use some baby shampoo, any very mild shampoos that are not aggressive, and you can refreshen your inner liners as often as you need or want to. All right, that was cleaning it. But how is the service? If you have a helmet like this for such a long time, things are bound to happen. And there's a fun little story. So I was sitting in a restaurant enjoying lunch with a couple of friends after a ride, and this helmet was sitting on a little couch to the side. Then a little toddler walks in, sees the helmet, the nanny is not paying attention, grabs the helmet and just tosses it to the ground. I was sitting there, you did what? And anyway, after some talking with the mother, we decided that it's a good idea to see if the helmet is broken or if it's still safe to wear. Lucky for anyone that's living in North America, Shoei USA has a lab in the greater LA area. So I packaged up the helmet into its box. Really good recommendation, keep the original box so you can send it around if you want. And I sent it to the Shoei lab where they actually x-ray your helmet for free. Shoei got into the x-ray machine and looked for any cracks in the EPS foam and didn't find any. You can imagine it like an x-ray or search for a broken bone. Same thing for the EPS is true, more or less, to see if there's any breakage in it and if the EPS foam would be still safe in an accident. So I'm really amazed that Shoei does this service for free, and they deemed the helmet to be still safe and sent it back to me. And if I remember correctly, it's been a couple of years ago, all I had to cover was the postage fees for one way. I think sending it to Shoei I had to pay for, way back they covered. If I remember correctly, don't quote me on that. Right, that was my only experience with the Shoei service, and I was very happy on how professional and quick the turnaround was. All right, I could tell you a lot of stories about rides and places I've been with this helmet, but to keep it short and sweet for you, kind of short, what is the summary? I had this helmet for over 6 years, at least 30,000 miles, track days, adventure riding, the heat of the desert, jungles. It had seen almost any scenario except for snow or rain, I guess, or hail. Anyway, it has seen a lot of weather, a lot of riding, and it held up exceptionally well. You have seen there were 1 or 2 spots where the helmet showed a little bit of wear and tear. The paint is in still very good condition. All the vents, the visor are in really good condition. So overall, the helmet hold up extremely well, and it is really a testament to the label handcrafted in Japan. This is a more expensive helmet, and you want to really treat it as an investment. If you buy a helmet, make sure you buy a design, a graphic that you can live with for a long time. So maybe don't go for the very trendy ones that are only hip for a moment. Go with a graphic that you like. I know this one is kind of special. It works with my black and red leathers, trust me, but it is an investment. The helmet will hold up if you treat it well, at least to my experience. I hope this video helped you. If I missed to cover anything, or if you want me to see how this helmet compares to a Shoei X14, for example, what are the pros and cons, why do I have both of them? If you have any other topics, any parts that I didn't cover in this video, any questions, please comment below, like and subscribe, or the other YouTube stuff. And most of all, Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Bye. This is the Shoei RF 1200. Awesome helmet.